Ringo was a professional drummer who sang and performed and had Ringo Starr time, and he was in one of the top groups in Liverpool before we even had a drummer.
Well, Rory and the Hurricanes, they were the first ones in Liverpool who really wanted to get into rock and roll, because we were playing skiffle then, before that. And he had this rock and roll blonde hair attitude, and Johnny Guitar was just, like, for me, Liverpool's Jimi Hendrix at the time. And the one really good story about Rory and the Hurricanes, which I was a member, we were playing the Cavern, and Johnny Guitar brought a radio with him, and he plugged his guitar into the radio so we could be a bit more rock and roll. And they threw us off for being rock and roll. He plugged in the radio. Get off!
John thought of the name Beatles, and he'll tell you about it now.
Well, I had a vision when I was 12, and I saw a man on a flaming pie, and he said, "You are Beatles with an A," and we are.
John put this thing in the Mersey Beat, right, which was also started by Bill Harry, who went to art college with John, just saying that this little guy appeared on a flaming pie, you know, in the sky, and said, "Let there be Beatles," with an A.
John got the name Beatles
ages
ago, you know, when we needed a name, and everybody was thinking of a name, and he thought of Beatles.
I was looking for a name like the Crickets that meant two things, and from Crickets I got to Beatles. When you said it, people thought of Crawley things, and when you read it, it was beat music.
That's better, Johnny. You know, I missed you. Ever since the club split up, I missed you. We all missed you. Did you miss them? Yeah, sure. The Beatles missed you. All the Beatles missed you.
When we started off, we had a manager in Liverpool called Alan Williams, who was a small bloke, with a little sort of high voice, little Welsh accent. Yeah, all right, lads. He was a great bloke, a real good motivator. He was very good for us at the time, you know. And he eventually got us an audition that was held at one of his clubs called the Blue Angel. And it was for Larry Parnes, who had a big stable, so-called, of rock stars down in London. And so this was like a big opening, you know, to get this audition. So we showed up there. Half the groups in Liverpool showed up there. I think all the groups in Liverpool showed up that day. And there were photos being taken as a record, you know, this is us at the audition, this is something for Larry to take a look at or whatever. And we always, unfortunately, had to ask Stuart to sort of turn a little bit away from the camera or say to him, "Look, don't get..." Because he couldn't play that well, we might be in A and he might be in A flat. And we thought someone would spot this, because we always looked, see where people were on the guitars, see where they... So we'd ask him to sort of turn away a bit. And so there are a few photos with Stuart, you know, moodily with his back to the camera, you know. That was the reason there. We eventually got the audition. I think Larry picked up quite a few Liverpool groups at that audition. And our only disappointment was, though, all the people in his stable were like Marty Wilde. They all had kind of very furious names. Billy Fury, somebody Tempest, Storm, Hurricane. They were all tempestuous names, you know.
There's Ron Wycherley, 17, known to his fans as Billy Fury, guaranteed £1,000 in his first year. Roy Taylor, 18, alias Vince Eager, £5,000 by his fifth year.
And of course we thought, well, this would be great, you know. Well, we ended up with this bloke called Johnny Gentle. Slight disappointment in the name department there.
John Askew, or Johnny Gentle, 22, from Merseyside. And Duffy Power, real name Raymond Howard, 17. All eager, power, gentle fury in the lucrative business, as someone said, of putting teenage growing pains to music.
Do you rechristen all your boys?
Oh, yes, I think this is terribly important. Otherwise, they would go on the stage with peculiar names that wouldn't be part of their makeup.
They didn't really like the name, the Beatles, so they wanted to come up with something more imaginative. So they came up with Long John Silver and the Beatles, and we thought, nah. So it ended up Long John and the Silver Beatles. We became the Silver Beatles for a while, for this tour of Scotland. So we thought, well, you know, if the name is, the group's being changed, and he's Long John, I mean, people... We all decided to change our names anyway, and people thought, Well, they did, but John didn't. John was cool, he didn't. Well, let me tell you, he was Long John for the period of that tour. He's quite happy to be Long John too. So I thought, well, if he's changing it, maybe we all should, So we all kind of fancied it. Our first foray into professional entertainment. That's what you do, isn't it? You change your name. So I became Paul Ramon for some reason. I thought it was a very exotic French-sounding name.
And I was Carl Harrison. And it's funny, really. It doesn't sound like a stage name now. It's just that I loved Carl Perkins.
Stuart became Stuart de Stael because he liked Nicholas de Stael, who's an abstract expressionist painter.
But anyway, it was a pretty pathetic tour. By the end of it, we were broke. We had no money. We were all cold and freezing and, just miserable. And that was it. We all came back to Liverpool and nothing happened, really. We didn't really know. I felt really sad because we were like orphans or something. We didn't have... Our shoes were all full of holes and our trousers were a mess. And we didn't have uniforms, And this guy, Larry Pond's fella, Johnny Gentle, he did have this posh suit and stuff. And I remember trying to play Won't You Wear My Ring or something around your neck. That's what he was doing. One of these Elvis tunes, remember? And we were crummy. The band was horrible, We were really an embarrassment. We didn't have amplifiers or anything.
So I would say to the others, when they were depressed, or we were all depressed, and thinking that the group was going nowhere and this is a shitty deal and we're in a shitty dressing room, I'd say, where are we going, fellas? And they'd go, to the pop, Johnny, in pseudo-American voices. And I'd say, where's that, fellas? And they'd say, to the toppermost of the poppermost. I'd say, right. Then we'd all sort of cheer up.
This band called Derry and the Seniors, they got offered this job to go to London, give up your jobs and come to London, and you go in with Larry, right? And so they all gave up their jobs, and then they didn't get a gig. So they were like a bit pissed off at that. So I remember them saying, we're going to London, we'll get that Ponzi and beat him up. So Alan Williams, who was the club owner, who did the audition, and it was sort of, he was probably the first big groupie of Liverpool. He drove him to London and said, well, bring your instruments, lads, and, you never know, he could get a gig. So he got him a gig in the Two Eyes in London. So they were playing there, and this fellow, Bruno Koschmieder, from this club in Hamburg, right? I think it was him, and he saw them and booked them to go to Germany. And then later he sent a message saying, I want another band, because we were probably so cheap. Send us another band. So Alan Williams came to us and said, OK, lads, you can have this job in Germany. The only problem is you've got to be 5 people. He's asked for a 5-piece band. At that point, Paul was the drummer because all the drummers didn't show up. And so that's when I said, OK, I remember this guy. We went up to this club and they were going to, Pete Best, and he had this drum kit for Christmas.
He was known on Merseyside as mean, moody and magnificent. Pete Best.
And then we had all sorts of different drummers all the time, because people who owned drum kits were far and few between. It was an expensive item, and they were usually idiots, We got Pete Best just because we needed a drummer the next day to go to Hamburg.
He came down to the Jacaranda Club. We did a quick audition with him and jumped in the van and went to Hamburg.